When people know how you're going to respond, they're more willing to tell you the truth. Like if they tell you the truth and you throw up excuses and say, well, no, that's not true. Like, well, let me give you the backstory. Let me give you the rhyme and reason. And you're always pointing the finger away, or you're always making excuses for, or you're saying, well, what about you? Again, I got flaws, but you got flaws. Who are you to? If you are not a safe person, people are not going to tell you the truth.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Between Sundays. So excited to be back for episode number 2. And today we are talking about growing as a leader. Pastor, tell me a little bit about what does that mean, growing as a leader?
We wrestled with this topic because so many people, when they hear the word leader, they don't think themselves as leaders. They don't consider themselves as leaders, right?
It's intimidating.
Yeah, so they run from that conversation like, no, I'm not a leader. I guess they're not talking about me. But honestly, every person has influence. If you're a single mom, and you've got raising kids, you're influencing those kids. If you are a young mother and a stay-at-home mom, you are absolutely influencing the next generation. You may be a co-worker, or you may be a Sunday school teacher, and you have influence in that class. You have influence with your peers. You have influence in that system. And so each one of us, whether we realize it or not, has influence. And how we leverage that influence is huge. And so our job, our goal here is just to really help you grow in that influence.
Yeah. And so I would probably see myself, if I think back several years ago when I first came to this church, Goodlettsville Pentecostal Church, and I would be in the camp of, if you would have said, hey, we want to talk to you about growing your leadership, I would have been convinced that you had me confused with somebody else. Because I would have never seen myself as a leader. That was never necessarily cultivated in me. It was never called out of me. And so I never saw myself that way. And so over time, getting into intentional conversations and getting into leadership development groups. I remember, back in the day, we had a group that still exists on campus today called the Aspiring Leadership Team. Which we've revamped that, we're calling it the Advancing Leadership Team now. And I remember being a part of that group and sometimes looking around thinking, I don't belong in this room. Like somebody has confused me with somebody else. And over time, through intentional conversations and just that development, a leader was cultivated out of me. And so that's what this is about. Like no matter where you're at on your journey of quote unquote leadership, there's a leader in there somewhere. And you said it already, leadership is influence. And so everyone has influence somewhere. And so I'm excited about this topic. Hopefully people are checked in right now with their notebooks out, ready to learn how to grow as a leader. So I'm interested to hear a little bit about your leadership story. So when did this happen for you? Like, okay, so we know, and you're not going to say it, but you're like, iconic leader, right? I know you're not going to say that.
No, I'm not going to say that.
Yeah, but I'll say
I don't believe that either.
I'll say it. Yeah. Like you. This is, to me, this is an anointing that's on your life to develop leaders. I've seen it. I've witnessed it. And but I'm so interested. I don't even know if I've ever fully heard. Like, when did this start for you? Like, were you ever in the seat of, I'm not a leader, this isn't me, or was this like, did you like when you took your first breath? Was it like people gathered in the hospital room, like waiting for you to tell them what to do? Like, what was that journey for you?
Yeah, that's real out there. It's without question. We want a leadership development culture in our church. We really do. That's the passion. I believe that really. This is not new with me, but or original with me. But 9 out of 10 church problems is really a leadership development problem. Like we need more help here. We need more leaders here. And it's really, do we develop leaders? That's the issue. Remember, Jesus, before he even started the church, he took 3.5 years to develop the disciples, right? Mentoring them and spending time with them and making sure that they're ready.
You don't look at that as leadership development,
You don't, but
right?
that's exactly what it is. But when I begin to take an insight and say, okay, when did leadership really begin to spark in me? When did I really acknowledge that? And again, I think the first instance I can acknowledge that or remember is on a playground when we were kids and it was break time, recess, and everybody wanted to play a game, but nobody was willing to organize it, and the thought hit me, Somebody needs to say, hey, we're going to play basketball. That's what we're going to do. And that's exactly what we did. I grabbed the basketball. Hey, we're going to create teams. And we started playing basketball. I remember that distinctly as thinking, you know what? Some people just need leaders in their life, or leaders need to rise to the occasion and say, hey, we're going in this direction. On a funny note, I tried this, like, does leadership really work? Okay. So I remember going to a bank. I had to go to the bank and I had to go inside to do some business. And so I got there a little early, and there was a lot of cars, and you can see people in their car, like they're waiting, but nobody's at the door. Okay. But they're waiting for the bank to be open. They're waiting for somebody to come and unlock the door. And I'm watching this unfold. And I thought, you know what? Somebody's going to be the first one in line, and then the line's going to form. So why not you? Okay. So I said, I want to watch this happen in real time. So I get out of my car, I go in line. And as soon as I stand at the door, a line starts forming. Okay. I don't know what it is. It's just, some people have a leadership bent. Okay. Yeah. And again, granted, I feel that. And there's a leadership. I look at things through the lens of a leader.
Yeah. So would you say it's personality driven? Do you think there's like a genuine question? Like, is leadership connected to personality, or is it something that's just like, I'm thinking of from a listener perspective right now, like, would somebody say, well, that's just Tim Zuniga, that's just the way he's wired, right? Is it personality? Is it genetics? Is it DNA? Or is there something else there? Is that, what does that look like?
Yeah, someone asks, are leaders born or are they made, right? Yeah. Well, everyone's born. So, you're naturally, you're born. But can everyone develop that skill? And does some people have a natural propensity for that? Yes, they do. Yeah. But actually, Scripture in Romans tells us that there is a gift of leadership. And I think in the King James Version, it goes something like this. If you have the gift to rule, if you have the gift to lead, do it with all diligence. And that verse has become so important to me. Like, one day I'm going to stand before God and give an account for the leadership gift He's given me. And so, yes, there are some people that are gifted. Now, again, I don't want to disqualify any, because everyone has influence. So everyone has a level of influence or leadership.
And I think that's what this episode is about, that debunking the idea that the only leaders are the ones that are going to take control on the playground, or have to be the one that, that what we would visualize as leader is always up front, galvanizing the room. They come in and everybody, just looks toward, there's leadership there, but that's not the only definition of leadership. And so I don't want someone to tune out because they think because of a personality trait that they're not leading. There are people who would walk into a room and no one would ever notice them that are incredible leaders, right?
For sure.
And so everyone can grow and develop as a leader. So let's dive into that. Like, that's what this episode is about. And the truth is we're not getting through this in one episode, right? There's so much here. There's no chance that we're getting through this. So I'm just going to tell everybody up front, you go ahead and get ready for part 2 of this one, because we're not going to finish it. But let's jump in. What does it look like to grow as a leader?
So let me start with this illustration. I was around 20 years old, and I went to a church growth conference, and it was in San Diego. I was youth pastor in San Diego, and it was at John Maxwell's church. He used to pastor a church in San Diego called Skyline Wesleyan Church. They were putting on a church growth conference, and several of us went. And so he did a lesson there that I never forgot. And really, it became something that just, I don't want to say scarred me, marred me, but it had a huge impact on the way I view leadership. And so the illustration he gave, and he's used it a lot. And so again, you probably have heard it before, but he used his hands. And so he used his left hand. He said, this hand, the left hand, represents really your ministry. It represents your praying, your fasting, your preaching ability, your speaking ability. This is all your ministry here. And he said, always, in the right hand, he said, represents your leadership. He said, so your ministry always comes under your leadership. And he put his left hand under his right hand. And he said, for instance, if your leadership's a 4, your ministry will only rise to a 3. If your leadership's an 8, your ministry will rise to a 7. Your leadership determines really the breadth, the width, the depth of your ministry, the height of your ministry. And he said, that's why some godly people, people that are spiritually minded, they pray and fast, they give their heart and soul, but they can't lead a church. They can't lead a department. They can't raise their influence. It's not because they don't have ministry. It's not because they're not anointed. It's because their leadership hasn't grown. But on the other side, too, you've seen some very carnal leaders. I've had conversations where I walked away and think, man, what did I just run into? Like, I need a shower, man. I need to wash my head out, right? Because this is not well. But because they have leadership skills, their ministry grows. That became a real, an influence on my life as I begin to really just say, okay, I need to take my leadership development as serious as I take my ministry development. As much as I lean into praying and fasting, I really need to lean into developing our leaders.
Yeah. So practically jumping in, what does that look like? Developing leaders and personally growing as a leader. Like, I put myself in the position of wanting to grow. I'm hooked. Yeah. What does it mean? Like, what are actionable items for me to do to grow as a leader?
Yeah, in my lifetime, leadership have changed. There's been 52 different leaderships. John Maxwell has 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. There's so much leadership understanding and insight and development. There's just no way. But there's new leadership. The way that we lead now is so different than the way we led years and years ago. Yeah. And so a couple of the things that I feel like that are helping people grow in their leadership, grow in their development, grow on the job, grow in their relations, grow in areas that matter to them. So again, these are not in an order of importance, but they're all the ingredients of the cake, right? You need these if you're going to develop as a leader, as an individual, as a person. And so the first one, I think, is just becoming self-aware. Like, do you realize what you bring to the table when you walk into a room, when you walk on campus, when you step on the job? Do you realize, are you aware of how you're presenting yourself, the temperature you're bringing, the influence you have? Do you know how your body language, your demeanor, your facial expressions, all of that, do you realize the influence you have just by stepping into the room? I've read a lot of books lately. I've dived into this, and some of the greatest thinkers of our day that come along, people that are all-star athletes and top CEO leaders and people that have major influence, they will tell you, these fantastic leaders, they have a self-awareness that is like none other. They have the ability to step outside of their surroundings and really monitor what's going on. How are they influencing? Are they engaging? Are they talking too much? Are they overpowering? Are they inviting conversations to them? This self-awareness is a growing issue.
Yeah, and there's a phrase that honestly, this phrase bothers me.
Yeah.
And it's the phrase, I don't care what anybody thinks about me. Right? Like, I hear people say that, and they throw that phrase around. I hear leaders say it. I've heard preachers say it. I've heard pastors say it. And every time I hear that, I think, I don't like that phrase. It doesn't feel like very much self-awareness in that phrase. So when you hear that, when you hear someone say, because this fits into self-awareness, when you hear somebody say, well, I don't care what anybody thinks about me, what does that trigger in you? What does that make you think?
Yeah, I cringe because I realize, like, you are unaware of what you're doing. You are minimizing your impact. People get frustrated because their ideas, or they have a working solution. They have something that they think will work, but it never gains traction. No one ever rallies around them. It's not sometimes because their idea is bad. Now, granted, sometimes it is a bad idea, sure, but sometimes it is because of the vessel it's coming from. Like, people need to buy into you as a person. They need to buy into you as an individual, as a team player, as a leader, before sometimes they buy into your thoughts and ideas.
Yeah, so the way that happens, right, the way people buy into you as a leader is this self-awareness. It's those micro interactions that you have. The way people see you, the way people perceive you, the way people interact with you is going to determine whether or not you truly effectively can lead them, right? I think it was Maxwell that said, if you think you're a leader but nobody's following you, you're really just taking a walk. Right. And so when I hear phrases like, I don't care what anybody thinks about me, chances are those are they're not self-aware leaders, and they probably don't have true followers. They may have people that are that drift toward them, but they're really not effectively leading people, I would say.
For sure. And I want to get real practical here, okay? Because
Sure.
this is so helpful. Like, okay, what does that literally mean?
Yeah.
Like, and again, some things as important as just smile. Like, smile more, right? My pastor used to say, if you want to grow your church by 10%, just every time you get to the platform, smile. Right? There's something that just softens people and endears people to you when you smile more. You greet people looking into their eyes. You let them see, I'm glad to see you, right? Some of these things are aware of somebody is in need and being aware of that. Sometimes you have to protect people from your own mood, right? You've had a bad day. You've come through a bad season. Can you protect the people that you're working with, the people you're surrounded from your own mood? Does like everybody know, like, what kind of mood is she in? What kind of mood is he in?
Who's showing up today?
Yeah, is this a good day? Right? Are we going to have a good day, or is this like, we're going off the rails? That's true. I mean, there's pastors that they lead in such a mood swinging kind of environment. It's unsafe.
Yeah, and when you say, I mean, everybody has a bad day, right?
Right? Sure.
Even the best of us have bad days. Something happens. You have every good intention of starting your day strong, and something happens. It's going to just launch the day in a not so good way. And so, but powering through that, right? Not being inauthentic. I think people can see through inauthenticity too. And so knowing that, you know what, everybody's human. We all have bad days. Again, the way you lead, your reputation, right? If you're always up and down, right? If you're who are we going to get today? I think that's what wears people out and eliminates followers from wanting to follow you. And so I agree. The consistency, the reputation, the self-awareness is all positive. So what else? Self-awareness. What are some other tips there?
Yeah, I think, again, if you're growing your leader, you got to let people speak into your life, right?
That's a tough one.
It is. It's a tough. Like, you got to be able to hear some tough conversations. And so I would just title it or just name it and brand it, ask good questions. Like, the better questions you ask, the faster you're going to grow. Right? If you ask questions that give insight, and here's what I can tell you up front, okay? Two things. One, the higher you go in leadership or the older you get, the fewer voices that can truly speak into your life.
Yeah.
Like, ask yourself, who would I allow to come into my world right now and just say whatever they want to say, and I would receive it and just say, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
Like, who can speak to you the truth?
Yeah.
Like, just think about that. If you're listening, just think of who can really walk into your world and say no.
Yeah.
And you're not going to argue, debate. You just receive it. The older we get, the higher we go in leadership, the fewer voices that can truly tell us truth. And that's scary. If no one can tell you the truth, if no one can be honest with you, if no one can tell you, man, you're going off the rails, you're not handling this right. If no one can be honest with you, you're done. You're going to have some casualties on the road. So that's a thing that's true, that you've got to allow people to speak into your life. But here's the other point that I want to make. When people know how you're going to respond, they're more willing to tell you the truth. Like, if they tell you the truth and you throw up excuses and say, well, no, that's not true. Like, well, let me give you the backstory. Let me give you the rhyme and reason. And you're always pointing the finger away, or you're always making excuses for, or you're saying, well, what about you? Again, I got flaws, but you got flaws. Who are you to? If you are not a safe person, people are not going to tell you the truth. Now, people are more willing to tell you the truth if they know how you're going to respond. And so, again, those are just two truths that when you think, okay, if I'm going to ask questions, I better make sure I'm ready to process that.
All right. So you said chances are, especially the older you get, there's very few people in your life who can do that. So talk to me about, how do you find those people? Like, what is that? Because that's got to be a really protected group, right, of people. And again, as you said, as you get older, that number shrinks. So how do you go about finding those people? What does that look like?
That's why questions matter. Because, people are not looking for a fight. People that love people, care about people, they're not looking to ding your life and mess you up. If they care and it's a big issue or something that's weighing on them, if they love you, they're going to walk into your life and say, hey, listen, can we have a conversation? Yeah. I've just been noticing something, and I just want to get your take on that. There's a way to ask that without pointing the finger and say, you're wrong. What's the deal? You're going to hell. You're bad. there's a way, like, hey, is something going on here? Like, is there something you want to share with me? I'm just feeling something that's a little awkward. And can you just, and you may say, no, we're good. It's just been a tough time. Well, that's fine. But that's why questions matter. And so a question like you could ask if you want to go to those people, and this really has to be a group you trust that love you. They're not looking to twist the knife, so to speak. They care about your development. They care about you as an individual. A question like this, is there an area in my life that you would like to speak into? And I'm not going to explain away. I'm not going to justify. I'm not going to try to, wash it over. I'm not going to try to point the finger. I'm just going to receive it. Is there an area in my life that you would like to speak into? That question right there is a real powerful question. As a leader, I'm still trying to develop. I'm asking leaders, again, I asked you recently, okay, what is it like being on the other side of me? I don't know what it is to work with me. I don't know what it feels like to handle, do I come overbearing? Can I be a little bit too pushy? Am I insensitive to your time, your season of life? You got 3 kids, you're a busy guy, got a lot of irons in the fire. Am I not aware? Am I not conscientious of the stress level that you're going through? What is it like really being on the other side of me? Great questions help you grow faster.
Yeah. And just hearing that, it puts even more weight on point number 1, which is being self-aware, right? Because for me, to be able to develop the trust to sit down and have those are deep heart conversations, right? Yeah. To be able to answer those honestly, there's been some corn in the crib, as they say, right? You've spent some time to be able to honestly ask those questions and receive whatever the answer is. Like somebody listening could go ask a random person, what is it like to be on the other side of me, right? And they may not even be ready to receive whatever that is, and they would take it with a grain of salt. But to genuinely ask those questions, what's it like to be on the other side of me, or is there an area that you would like to speak into my life? Like you had to put there's got to be some weight put on that. Like if you're on the other side of that and the person's asking you that, like that's not something to take lightly either, right? You want to see the sincerity of the moment and really lean into that and answer that honestly. And so I think that's powerful. So it's asking good questions.
And if you're the person that you get privilege that somebody asks you that, okay? If you get the privilege of speaking plain and with candor to someone's life, you get that privilege. I think it's so helpful that you demonstrate your care and concern and love for them, okay?
Yeah.
That they see your heart. That, you know what, I'm here for you. I'm so proud and grateful. I'm blessed to have you in my life. I know you're a fantastic individual. Let me just answer this in this way, okay? And so you say it in a way that demonstrates your heart, where, this is not a time to pull out the shotgun and say, okay, here's my moment.
Yeah.
I'm going to fire away. You can damage people.
And it would probably be your last opportunity,
That's right? And they will never come back
That's
again.
Right.
So it's a great time to build that relationship. So
yeah, so good. All right, so this next one's tough, right? Number 3, this is a tough one in growing, how to grow as a leader. Because this is connected directly to, it's very personal, your calendar. And so talk to me about how to take control of your calendar.
Yeah, this is the secret of great leaders, okay? I've learned this the painful way. I've been where I felt like the man that is spinning 9 plates on sticks, and I'm just running after the one that's about to stop and fall and break and get that one spinning again. I have been there. I've been moments where I found myself between pews and just saying, I don't know if I can do more. I can't keep moving this fast. And there's an implosion going on, and no one knows it. You're still preaching, you're still leading, and no one sees that. I've been there, okay? And as I've studied and learned from great leaders, one of their secrets is that their calendar leads them. I've really tried to help my life and help other leaders. Like, if you want to gain control and if you want to be more productive, then you need to let your calendar be the tool that leads that. And again, this has been a lot of trial and errors, but I can tell you this, with time and obligation and demands and requests that are in all of our lives, you can get pulled in so many directions. You don't know if you're coming or going. You're certainly not healthy. Those that are closest in your life, your home, your family, your kids, they feel the stress of that. And again, we've been there. We've all been there. Every great leader that is doing anything great in and with quality in their life, they know what I'm talking about. And so, but what I've learned is that how do great leaders write books and speak and lead these organizations and multiple organizations? How do they get so much done? Are they just different? Are they just cut from a different cloth? And that may be true. But what I can tell you is the common denominator is that they all manage their calendar very well. So for instance, when I got here, I love people. I care deeply about people. I want people to know I'm for them. I want them to succeed. I want their homes to be. And so if someone had said, hey, Pastor, can you meet? Man, I would find the first moment I had available and I would meet. And here's what it would look like. Like I would begin studying for a message and I have a meeting in 30 minutes. And so I would do my best, but I would not be fully engaged. I couldn't always give my best to it because I had this in 30 minutes, I have a meeting. And so I'd get up from that and I'd go have that meeting. And I'm sure they hopefully they were blessed and I helped them. And then I'd come back and I'd have another meeting an hour and a half later. And I thought, man, this is just crazy. And so I've learned over time that there are days that I meet and there are days that I focus on thinking and getting my life and getting the church and getting what I need to get done, things that only I can do, accomplish. Doing that has freed me up. And just recently having conversation with young leaders that have jobs and ministry, and how do we balance all this? Well, the truth of the matter is, one, it starts with your calendar. But here's the lie that we have believed. The lie is like, I don't have enough time.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, these great leaders that do it, they don't have more. They don't have 27 hours.
Same amount of time.
They have the same amount of time.
Right.
What they have done is they have disciplined their time. Okay.
Yeah.
So don't say you don't have time. Say this: I'm not making time for that. Like somebody says, I want to exercise. That's one of my goals. I want to exercise more. I want to be better at that. Don't say you don't have time to exercise. Say I'm not making time to exercise, because the truth is, if you worked 50 hours a week. And a secular, went to church, gave to ministry, there's still some time that you could discipline yourself to do the things that need to be done.
And that right there is the word. Because if we really pull the sheets off of this, right, the reality is that our time struggles are discipline problems, right? Like
right.
Whenever you look at it, when we say I don't have time, what really we're saying is we haven't made time, or we haven't disciplined ourselves to make the time. And so calendaring, like the older that I get, I remember a day where I laughed at the idea that you had to have a calendar, right? You think either one, like I'm good enough, I'll remember everything, or I'll get to everything, or two, calendars are for older people, right? This is an old person, or this is a person who has a CEO of a company. He needs a calendar, but little old me doesn't need a calendar. But the older I got and the busier I got, the more I realized, and you alluded to this, is really my calendar, my time. When we say calendar, we're talking about time. Right. It really affects every part of my life.
It does.
It affects my relationship with my kids. It affects my relationship with my wife. It affects my relationship with my friends, my ministry. All of it is connected, intricately connected to the amount of time I'm willing to make for that. And so this calendaring is a huge way to grow as a leader. And so I've been exposed to, I kind of dig marketing and getting into marketing stuff. And I've been following some people, and I'm always so intrigued to hear how some of the most successful people, like, what does your day, because you said it, 24 hours. Yeah. You and I have the same amount of time every day to spend. How do you get so much done? And every successful person that I know that I've listened to or talked to, they have a rigorous, strategic, intentional schedule, whether it's their mental health, their spiritual health, their physical health, their relational health, all of those, they have intentional time carved out for it. So this calendar thing, it's not just something for the older generation or for the really busy CEO somewhere in an office. This is for wherever you're at as a leader. This calendaring is a really big deal.
Yeah, it influences you and has more effect on you than you ever can imagine. Let me give you some backdrop to this. So I followed a pastor, Brother Ray Carson. A lot of you may know who he is. He pastored this church for 35 years. A prince of a man, the most godly man I know. He still influences me today. I owe that man a debt of gratitude. But I tell you, in working with him, I remember him saying this: whatever you do, don't do it like I did it. So let me give you some perspective of that.
Wow.
Brother Carson was a pastor's pastor. Like if you called him, he was going to respond. You had an aunt that just moved here and she's in the hospital whose dog is sick. He's going to be there. He's done more funerals. He's done more visitations. He was the prince of that. Again, that was his reputation. People loved him for that. Okay, but he would tell you on a personal side. If you pulled him away, he would tell you whatever you don't do that. He'd get up. He'd have dinner with his family. Somebody call, hey, I got to go solve a marriage problem. I'll be back. And his wife and kids had to eat dinner by themselves. I vowed in myself I wasn't going to do it. And I've never said this publicly. I'm saying it now because I'm trying to give insight. I'm going to be a little bit more intentional. There are real crises that you need to respond to in the moment. Yeah. And the wisdom is what is a crisis and what is a crisis, right? Because what is a crisis to you may not be a crisis. Like if your marriage is in trouble right now, what took you 20 years to get your marriage all messed up, I'm not going to fix it in a night. I'm not going to fix it with an hour session, right? That's not. We can get to this.
Wait.
It can wait. I promise you. And so what's a crisis to you may not be a crisis really. But again, I'm not minimizing. It's a crisis. But how I respond to it, I got to lead in a healthy way. And so one of the things that I'm always curious when I look at leaders and I'm trying to learn from leaders is like, what does their life look like? Like, what does that mean, right? So can I just give a little perspective of my week for again, this is the first time that I've shared this, but I'll share it. So for me, Monday and Tuesdays are meeting days where I meet with key staff members, okay? I meet with key staff members and again, trying to make sure that they have the information, trying to develop them, trying to make sure that they know I'm for them. Again, one of our key meetings is at noon on Mondays. We have our senior leadership team come together and we unpackage the day before the Sunday. We talk about the following week and following Sunday. And so we get a lot of mileage. We try to talk about that.
There. People don't even know that.
Yeah.
Like they don't know that on Mondays. I mean, I'm thinking GPC people that are listening right now, they're like, wait a second. Every Monday you guys talk about Sunday. Every Monday, unless it's a holiday, and then we don't skip it. We do it Tuesday.
Do it Tuesday, right?
We're breaking down Sundays.
And it's part of our DNA. It's how we operate. I'll do some Monday meetings with some staff members. Again, I'm clarifying who I'm meeting with: staff member, senior leaders. On Tuesday, again, I will begin my day. Again, me and you, we begin Tuesday mornings. We'll go over
with coffee.
With coffee, that's right, and we'll talk about what I need you to know. You share with me what I need to know, and we make sure you're good as a leader. How's your family? How's your marriage? How's things going? I want to make sure you're a high productive leader, Billy. You have huge amount of influence in this church, and so I need to make sure you're good. Those have been great times for me. You may think that they're time wasters, but
literally in a conversation yesterday, in a meeting that I was in, I'm referencing those meetings and how valuable they are, and how it's just. It's dynamically changed. Even our interactions and the time that we spend, that intentional time. So shout out to Tuesdays at 9.
So at 10 o'clock, we sit down and we program Sunday. Like what songs are we going to sing? What announcements? What are we working on? Like Easter.
What? We don't show up and just figure it out on Sunday?
No, we plan it out. God's going to interrupt a well thought out, prayed over, planned out service. And so we really strategize months in advance, trying to make sure we get it right. That Tuesday, again, I meet with other leaders. Wednesday for me, lately, and again, this is me learning, growing as a leader, is my day of buckling down, putting myself away and studying and preparing for what I and only I can do. So whether that's Sunday's message, whether that's some lessons I need to crank out, whatever that time is, things I need to study, how do I get deep? How do I get beyond surface stuff? How do I get deep? That's Wednesday's my day. If somebody called me and said, hey, you want to do breakfast on Wednesdays? I'm just telling you, as much as I love you and as much as I would want to, it's a no. It's a hard no, because that's the day that I'm putting myself to study. Now, Thursdays is a day that I give to, if someone in the church wants to meet, hey, I'd like to meet with Pastor. Thursday's that day. There could be some times that I have, every hour booked up for Thursday. And if that Thursday gets filled up, they go to the next Thursday, right? And again, this gives me time to do the things that only I can do. Here's what I can tell you. No one is going to ask me to do my priorities. They will ask me to do their priorities, right? I have a need. I have a crisis. I have a problem. I need you here, Pastor. I get that. But no one is going to ask me to exercise. No one's going to ask me to pray. No one's going to ask me to invest in my family, right? Not that they don't care. It's just that's not what people do. And so, again, Thursdays is the day that I give to meeting with people. If you want to meet, I'm happy to meet, fill it up, and we're going to let God lead the way. Friday now, this is not a secret, is my day off. I tell people, don't die on Friday, right? Because Friday is a day that I'm going to spend with my wife. We're going to go lunch. We're going to be just us, and it's going to be our day. And if I want to sleep in, I'm going to sleep in. I'm not going to apologize because I take a nap. I remember this. So it was a Friday, and Julie and I were walking out of the store. I think it was Old Navy. We're walking out of the store, and a car drove by, and window rolled down, and said, "Hi, Pastor." Now, granted, again, I go to the car. "How are you? It's so good to see you, Sister So and So. Man, great to see you." As I'm walking away, I'm grabbing Julie's hand. We're walking to the car, like I'm in a sweatshirt. I'm in jeans. Like not. I'm just casual, right? Like, and I'm thinking. The shame hit me. Like you're supposed to be working. You're supposed to like impress people that you're always on. And I thought, nope.
Wow.
This is my day.
Yeah.
And this is my moment. And I'm going to be with my wife. And I don't care what anybody else thinks. Right. I'm just telling you, it was freeing to me. Okay.
Yeah.
And so that's what my week looks like. I probably most people don't care. But again, I have had years to try to train myself to get there.
So that is wild. And I see I get a direct insight into
Sure.
that. And so I see the value and the benefit of that. I see, how even as staff, having those intentional times and the scheduled stuff is a benefit. You said something a moment ago that if your calendar will fill up.
It will.
And so to do it the right way, you take control of your calendar, right? And so I had a friend recently, Daniel Bernard. We were talking about, and this guy's crazy busy,
Sure.
just doing all kinds of amazing stuff. And he was working for a church, and he said he would get hit up, regularly, asked to do things. Can you do this for us, or can you do this? And he always had this amazing answer. He said, "Yes, I could do that, but let me tell you what it's going to cost me to do that."
Yeah.
So yes, I could show up to fill in the blank and help you with this, but it's going to cost me going to my daughter's birthday party.
Right.
And what it showed me was, because he was so intentional with calendaring his time, it gave him the parameters to explain away. Now, he could have just said, "No, I can't
Right.
do it." And it puts a thought in somebody's head like, "Well, I thought you were the fill in the blank. I thought you were on staff at the church. Why aren't you able to do this?" But he's so structured and calendared that it gave the people that insight as to why he may not be able to do that. And so calendaring is so critical. And so,
Can I just want to share one more point on this,
Please.
because this is so true. So on Friday, and I already said it's my day off. It's been that way for years. Okay, there were 2 times that I had someone call me and said, "Man, I really need to talk to you. This is really bad." And in my pastor's heart, I knew it was a real need. Okay, I knew. And so those 2 times I violated my own rule of my Sabbath, and I went and had breakfast or met and had lunch or whatever just to have that conversation, okay? 2 times. 2 times I did that. Both of those instances, none of those people are in church today.
wow.
None of them.
Wow.
None of them. That has become just a haunting reality, right? You violated something and it never even mattered. Right. And now I have to live with that. Okay. So yeah, it's calendaring is the secret of great leaders. It's going to be the success and really the tool for every future growing leader.
Ironically, talking specifically about Fridays, I was in a conversation recently with another pastor, and you had shared the Friday rule, the Friday principle. And he took that back. This is a busy guy, involved in a lot of things, and was honestly, like his doctor was telling him, you're going to kill yourself if you continue at this pace. And he told me recently that when he heard that, it was tough because in his mind, like, I'm pastor, I have to do all this. But he implemented the Friday rule, and he said it's literally changed his life, his health, family dynamics, every bit of it. And so it works. And it's not just about taking a Friday off, because realistically, a lot of people can't do that, right? It's about being intentional with scheduling specific time with your family, specific time for your physical health, for relational health. That's what it's about. That's what this growing as a leader, wherever you're at, as a mom, as a dad, as a coworker, whatever it is, it's about growing as a leader and being intentional with your time.
Last night, having a conversation with my son, and we were talking about this very subject. And he said, like, Dad, I can't just take a day off. I can't take a Friday off. And I said, I realize that. You're not in that season. You're not at that stage. But if you look at your calendar, there is maybe it's Saturday morning. Maybe that's a hard no in any ask, okay? I got friends that are going to go play volleyball. It's a hard no in any ask, because that's the day that I am going to it's my Sabbath. It could be a season. It could be a moment. But every one of us deserves to have that moment where we know, you know what, it's my time away. I will say this. I've never driven off this campus where every need is met. Every phone call was made, everyone that needed a text or a word of encouragement, where every problem was solved. I've never driven off this campus where everything was just good, right? Every time I drive off, there's someone that could use a word of encouragement, a prayer, a strengthening, right? But if I let that wait, it will crush me. And eventually it will be my undoing. I have to be able to drive off and say, God, these are your people.
So good. All right, so one other thing that we want to do, we are blessed with some amazing volunteers here at Goodlettsville Pentecostal Church. I mean, a lot of amazing volunteers. And so we want to take an opportunity in each episode just to give one of them a shout out. And we're going to ask, a random person for every episode what their favorite Bible verse is. And so, Pastor, who we got today?
We have a fantastic leader, and we are truly blessed with so many wonderful, amazing leaders. But this particular one, Davis Kelly. Davis Kelly, big shout out to you, my man. He's involved with youth. He's involved with children. I thought I saw him on the platform singing the other day. Yep. He's always willing to help, him and his wonderful wife, Bethany. But Davis, he's a stellar leader, great heart. And so his favorite verse, Ephesians 2:1-6, and you hath he quickened who were dead in your trespasses and sins, wherein in time past ye walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that now worketh in the children of disobedience, among whom also we have all had our conversation in times past in the lust of our flesh, fulfilling the desires of the flesh and of the mind, and were by nature the children of wrath, even as others. But God, who is rich in mercy, for his great love wherewith he loved us, even when we were dead in sins, hath quickened us together with Christ. By grace are ye saved. Verse 6, and hath raised us up together and made us sit together in heavenly places in Christ Jesus. Ooh. Powerful verse. Shout out to our man, Davis Kelly.
You asked him for a verse. He gave you a sermon.
Sneaker preached.
So good. So, quick recap. Because I don't even know where we're at on time, but I'm going to tell you we're over 30 minutes. I guarantee it. Okay. So self-awareness. Number 1, self-awareness. Number 2, you got to ask good questions or stay curious. And then number 3, you got to take control of your calendar. So good. All right, action item. You ready?
Action item. So my action item for this podcast would be find 2 or 3 people, could be your group, and just ask them one of these questions, like, is there an area of my life that you would like to speak into? And just tell yourself and tell them up front. I'm not going to refute. I'm not going to explain away. I'm not going to try to minimize. I'm not going to try to, nothing. I'm just going to receive it, because in every instruction or every criticism, there's a kernel of truth. Growing leaders find that kernel of truth. So again, everything may not be true what they say, but there's a kernel of truth in there. So ask a great question.
Awesome. Thanks, guys, and catch us next time on Between Sundays.